Hello again, MAT students, and welcome to part one for week 9. I'm going to just introduce the topic of feedback. Again, you guys will be looking in depth at the chapter and doing a presentation report on it, and then giving feedback to each other and discussing the different presentations. So that'll be next week, though. And levels of feedback is one thing I do want to go over that I don't believe the book does at the depth that I'd like to at least look at it. I like these two memes. What if I told you criticism can be constructive? And then, of course, Liam Neeson, I have a very particular set of skills. I will find your questions and I will answer them. Um, what was I going to say? I think that a lot of times students feel that criticism, feedback is negative. They don't like getting feedback. They don't like getting criticism. So trying to give feedback to students in a way that helps them to learn, that encourages them, but also points out where they're not meeting what they need to meet, whatever level or goal, can be challenging. So we'll look at that this week and next week. So feedback. This is from the book, page 144. One of the page 144s, I'm not sure which version it was. Effective feedback has a huge impact on learning, but poor feedback can be detrimental to progress. I think that's important to remember that when we give feedback to students, we are some of them take it very personal, right? And we have a very powerful impact. We can have a very powerful impact on how they see themselves. Um, the Haim Gano quote about I'm convinced that I am the one who has the power in the classroom. I can make a student's day, I can ruin their day. I forget the exact quote, but that comes to mind, especially in regards to feedback. One very popular feedback method. This is more of an elementary style feedback, at least the way this card is set up is called the tag method. T is to tell me something you liked about what I did. A is to ask a question, and then G is to give a suggestion to improve. I think that for a lot of us in adolescent education, middle school through high school, we tend to just jump to the suggestions to improve. I know I do with my university students when I'm with the undergrad students going through and giving them feedback on essays. I'll just post, hey, you should do this. Hey, you could do this. Hey, you need to do this. I won't always take the time to say something I liked unless it's in like a longer section at the bottom of the paper, or ask questions. I'll just jump to the suggestion. And oftentimes, I think with students, if we don't go through, at least tell them a positive before we get to the suggestions, they are more likely to check out or turn off to what we're saying. I would say that as far as helping them improve who they like their writing, their assignments, whatever it was they did, the suggestion to improve is probably the most important part, right? Asking a question can also help them improve. Telling something they liked really won't help them improve, but at the same time, it does have positives in the sense that it helps them to develop a better picture for who they are as a worker, whether that's a writer, a mathematician, whatever the subject might be. So again, if you were going to use something like this, excuse me, I wouldn't do it on every single assignment necessarily, but if you did something like this, maybe without all the little cutesy students, maybe you like cutesy students, I don't know, but you could definitely do this with a very simplistic look and something you like, a question, and then a suggestion. You can also teach this to your students when you ask them to give peer feedback, when you ask them to give feedback on maybe an exemplar assignment you're showing from the front of the class, and you have them go through and do a form like this. It could be almost an exit ticket, right? Where they're going to give you feedback, and maybe it's going to be feedback on how something went, and that's going to help you understand what they know and don't know. What makes feedback effective? So several things, and again, these are largely from the book. I'm trying not to step on too many of your toes as you're getting ready to do this next week. I think one that's critical is that it's formative check. It's formative assessment, right? It's a formative thing. It's like a physical. It's not an autopsy. So we want to give them room to improve, room to grow, room to get better. It's not meant to be just one and done, and there's no way to fix it. If we are doing that, then it's not necessarily effective feedback because they can't change. They can't make they can't grow from that situation if we don't give them the opportunity to make changes. ZPD, hopefully that's a little familiar to you guys, the zone of proximal development, right? Where particularly specifically are they, and where can they go with help? So some students can't go as far, some students can go further. So as we give feedback, thinking, where are they now? Where can they get to if I help them? I specifically think about reading essays with this. Some students, I read their essays, and there's so much that needs to be fixed. Oh, I don't know where to start. Other students, I'm like, okay, I think I could give them a suggestion here and it might help them to make it a little bit better. So it just depends on where they are, and where we think they can get to. With a student that has so much to do, I would pick one or two things. I wouldn't try and fix everything at once. That doesn't tend to work too well. And there's the next one. Choose one or two things to focus on at a time. So you can even focus on, say, grammar, on one way of scoring something if it's a written assignment, or you could not focus on grammar at all and instead just focus on the content. But again, giving them small amounts of things to work on fixing instead of just blasting them with all of the problems you see. Remember that grades can motivate. So giving a student a grade can be motivational. It's an external motivator, but that can be a very powerful motivator for most students. But research shows that when students get a grade, the learning tends to stop. They tend to stop trying to improve, stop trying to make it better. So the longer you can wait before you give them a grade, whoops, I'm freezing there. There you go. The longer you can wait before you assign a grade to their work, the more they will be motivated to keep learning. So discussion question one, what has been your experience both giving and receiving feedback? Is it something you like, something you don't like? Do you use it in teaching? How important do you think feedback is to student growth and learning? Excuse me. And then quickly through some levels of feedback. So I found this very interesting. This is from a responsive teaching book by Harry Fletcher Wood, 2017. The link is here. It's actually an online blog format, but it's an excerpt from a chapter from his book. And I thought this, again, was very interesting, different levels of feedback. So moving from specific feedback to general feedback, from concrete through reflective and to existential feedback. I would say that when I first started teaching, and really for a lot of my teaching, specific concrete feedback was really where I focused. If I gave feedback, I taught science, did do a lot of writing in my science class, did have them do art projects, posters, workbooks, things like that, labs, of course, and I tended to be very specific and concrete in my feedback. So there, Fletcher would say, or at least this is based on his ideas, that there's four levels. Something to feedback about this specific task to help them improve the task, feedback about the subject to help them improve their understanding of the subject, feedback about self-regulation to help them improve their ability and their understanding of themselves as a learner or a worker, and finally self-evaluation, which is more general and, according to the chart here, existential. Notice it's also in red. According to the author, this is the type of evaluation of feedback that really isn't that helpful. It does have some positives, some possible positives, but in terms of helping them improve on knowledge, learning, task, things like that, self-evaluation is not as helpful. So for this task, I might give feedback such as this paragraph 3 needs more evidence, right? How can I get this done? How can I make it better? So specifically on the task itself only, feedback that would help them improve. So the effects are usually limited just to that task. Level 2 feedback on the subject, how can I do better in tasks like this? What does it mean to be good in this subject? So it's taking it from just the specific task to this subject in general a little bit bigger. I might tell them, go back to the brief or the instructions and see if you've met the goals. I might say a good mathematician always checks their work. So I wouldn't specifically say, here's the problem. I might say, hey, remember this, you might want to go check your work. It does help students understand the features of success in the subject. So what needs to be important? What do I need to know so I can be successful within this subject? And this could still refer back to level 1, but it's more general. Self-regulation, level 3, how can I manage myself to learn better? Who do I want to be? So we could ask them reflective questions like which strategies that you used worked well? Why did those work well? help them improve their understanding of how they learn. We call that metacognition, and we want students in general to be deep thinkers and learners. We want them to think about thinking, to learn about their own learning, to be more advanced in metacognitive areas. And then the final one, again, that is suggested not to be as important is level 4 self-evaluation. How good am I? And that's a question we always ask ourselves. And not that it's not an important question, but in terms of helping them improve their learning, this doesn't really help them improve their learning. Comments like "you're a good student," "you tried very hard at this." I wouldn't say don't ever use those, but it's better when you focus on what they've done, not on who they are or what they are. Uh, we know from research that praise has little or no positive effect on student learning, largely because it offers no useful information about how to improve. Um, if the students don't feel that the praise is genuine, then they get very turned off by that. If they do get motivated by praise, but then you don't give them praise the next time, they're going to start being unmotivated. So generally praising them for who they are, that that they're good, is not considered a better way to do feedback. Okay, so 4 different levels, and the author here that I'm referencing, Fletcher Wood, also talks about linking levels, and I thought this was very interesting. So oftentimes in the essays that I check for my undergrads, I will find contractions, and they're supposed to be formal essays. You're really not supposed to have contractions in formal essays. So I will generally say something along the lines of, remember to spell out contractions in more formal writing, and then I will show them the correction. Sometimes I just show them the correction, especially after the first 2 or 3 times that they've done a bunch of contractions. But if I could just say, it is not it's, right? So spell it out, don't just put this. So I could help them just fix just that one issue, or I could expand it, right? Make it more general so it relates to the subject as a whole. And that tends to have more value in helping them learn because both are getting met. They're finding out what they need to do to improve their current assignment, but also what they need to remember next time so that they internalize it and maybe can even transfer it to another area of their work. Uh, Correct question 2. You could just put that, and it's not that that's a bad thing to put, but that's a very level 1 feedback. Correct question 2. Remember to use PEMDAS, right? Something that's going to refer them back to subject knowledge. Clear explanation needed could change to clear explanation needed. Describe the effect of this change. Well, I froze again. There you go. Where I'm giving them not just a specific task fix or feedback, but it's more, excuse me, it's more global, it's more general. And then finally, here's another one. This is from the author. Science often advances through testing anomalies. Why did this prove fruitful in this case? And again, so asking more of a clarification question, but then applying it to the subject in general so students can start learning that that is true in other areas in that subject. Okay. And so then discussion question 2, and this is our last slide, oops, for this session. How realistic is it if we plan to give every student detailed feedback on every assignment? The words to highlight there are every, detailed, and every. And then what's a more realistic option for giving your students helpful feedback? So I don't know what the answers here are going to be. I'm just kind of throwing this out to you. I do think on this first question, if I was a lawyer, they would sustain the objection that I was leading the witnesses. It's probably obvious that I don't think it's very realistic to give every student detailed feedback on every assignment, but I think there are other options for setting up helpful feedback to students. So I'll be interested to see what you guys come up with for this question. Okay. And again, that's it for this session. I will see you in the next one.